Right, a very, very good evening. Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine with Pick and Pay. Thank you very much for joining me. What is an evening I've been really looking forward to, because there is more than just wine tasting to be done. There is also a celebration of a rather special auction that is kicking off online tomorrow. And my guest on the wine show relates to that auction. You will be speaking very shortly to JD Pretorius, cellar master at Warwick, and then to the inimitable Ken Forrester, man behind Ken Forrester Wines. And you might be thinking, well, hang on a moment, Dan, you had JD on the show not that long ago, and Ken Forrester not that long before that, and you've had wine from both Warwick and Ken Forrester with other wine tasters. Why on earth have you got them on again? Well, there are two reasons. One is I really, really like their wine, but the other reason is that they have been enormously, enormously generous. I am a great friend of a charity called Reach for a Dream, a charity that does wonderful, if often heartbreaking work, helping terminally ill kids to reach their dreams. They may want to go on an aeroplane for the first time, visit the beach, fly in a hot air balloon, meet Cristiano Ronaldo, all manner of dreams. And Reach for a Dream has had an astonishing record in matching these dreams and giving these kids and their families a really special experience and some terrific memories. But all of this costs money. Money is hard to come by in the time of COVID. And so, having had an auction not that long ago where we were supported by Waterford and we raised 20,000 Rand for Reach for a Dream, there's another auction kicking off tomorrow, Friday morning, 9 a.m., where your prizes are as such: a 5-litre bottle of the Warwick Trilogy, that's a lot of wine, a 5-litre bottle of the Barrel, which is a superb red out of Ken Forrester, and then for the winner, 2 bottles from each estate, plus 2 bottles from each estate for 3 of your friends, and you plus those 3 friends and their family will be able to join myself, JD, and Ken online at a mutually acceptable time for a virtual live tasting of those wines. It's a really special experience. It's one I'm hoping raises a lot of money for Reach for a Dream. And that is exactly why I have our 2 winemakers with us. I Ken Forrester a little later, but right now, a warm welcome and a good evening to JD.
How's it, Dan? How are you? And thanks for having us back.
Oh, great pleasure. It hasn't been that long. But if I can ask you, JD, just to tilt your screen forward a little bit so we've got a little less headroom, and more importantly, so we can see that magnificent beard of yours. There we go. Well, welcome back. It's not been that long since we saw you. I'm imagining it's been quite a busy time at Warwick over the last little while. Wine sales have commenced, and the wine world has gone a little crazy here in South Africa.
They have, and we're very thankful that they have. We've had an incredible month of June. I think it's the most wine Warwick has ever sold in winter. So thank you everyone for your support. We've had a bit of a mare with logistics, as I believe quite a lot of other wineries have had. But that also what ended up being quite fun. Everybody from Christiana, our CEO, and Tom's our sales manager, farm managers, everyone just out on the road delivering wine across the Western Cape as much as we could to get the backlog of orders placed through the lockdown. So it was a bit of a challenging time and a few nasty emails, but I think luckily by kind of week 2, week 3, we made it through and delivered all the wines, and hopefully now everybody has stocked up. And it seems to be that people are drinking more than they used to, and we hope it continues.
It's very welcome respite for you. For most of the wine guys, I don't think I've spoken to anybody in the industry who doesn't have a similar story to tell of wine coming through. And you are repaying that vote of faith from South African wine drinkers by joining the philanthropic drive we have up and running from tomorrow, Reach for a Dream. It's a really, really special auction. And a big thank you to Tom Orphan, your sales manager, who got hold of me to ask if you guys could get involved. And I guess it's a time now. You guys went through a really tough period. It wasn't easy for the wine industry as a whole. It's got better over the last month by some distance, but it's probably a good time to look to put something back and repay some of the good karma.
Absolutely, yes. We to give you an idea, we sell the vast majority of our sales go through South Africa. So we had no sales in April. We didn't sell a single bottle of wine. And in May, we sold about a pallet's worth. So very, very challenging time, and that's not unique to Warwick. That's pretty much the industry. And like I said, we've had incredible response, and people ordering 2, 3, 4, 5 times since just in the month of June. So yeah, absolutely great to be able to help a worthy cause, and it's something I know that you take quite seriously, and you guys have had incredible stories that I've read in the past. So we're very happy to be part of it, and happy to be able to, as you say, give something back to a community that ultimately is now largely at stake, or largely kind of being able to help the wine industry out of the slump that it's in. So it's very cool to be part of it.
Well, thank you very much for it. A reminder that from the Warwick side, you will be receiving, if you are the winning bidder on our Reach for Dream auction that I am supporting through Dan Really Likes Wine, a 5-litre bottle of the Trilogy. And just before we go into the other wine that we have, that Trilogy, tell us a little bit about that red blend and why 5 litres will be a marvellous acquisition.
Yeah, so Trilogy is our flagship wine. It's, as the name suggests, always a blend of 3, and it's used to be, up until 2015, always a Cabernet Sauvignon dominated blend. From 2015 onwards, Cabernet Franc blend, Cabernet Franc based, with Cabernet Sauvignon and also Merlot as the smallest part. And it really is just the creme de la creme from Warwick, and a great kind of quintessential Stellenbosch style blend from the foothills of Simonsberg Mountain. And it really is unique to Stellenbosch and to the place, and great kind of textured big wine. And you know how they say that it's a proven fact that the bigger the bottle, the better the wine. So that's so 5 litres will guarantee that it is a spectacular bottle.
Of course, we have had the Trilogy before on the show, and as much as I liked it in its earlier iterations, I'm a Cab Franc obsessive at the moment, and that Cab Franc component just adds such a wonderful, wonderful dimension, which is no bad thing, particularly because we've got some Cab Franc to try shortly. But let's kick off with the first of the wines we have, and it is wine that applies to the auction as well, because you will be receiving, if you're the winner, a bottle of the White Lady Chardonnay, as will all 3 of your chosen friends that we delivered to them, so that you can have a wine tasting with myself and JD on the Warwick side. Talk to me about the lady story. You've got the White Lady, you've got the 3 Cape ladies, there's the Blue Lady. Occasionally, when Pip Ratcliffe was still there's the lady falling over early afternoon. So you've got all sorts of ladies. I'm guessing most of those relate to the great and wonderful Norma Ratcliffe.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, Norma Ratcliffe was the first winemaker for Warwick, and also owner. And she was really one of the driving forces behind female winemaking and just winemaking in general in the late 80s and early 90s. And she really made a big mark in the industry. And her first wine that she released under the Warwick label was called Femme Blur, which is French for the Blue Lady. And largely, I think, to be different, she wanted a blue label and a blue capsule. And if you can remember back to wines in that era, basically all of them had this kind of burgundy and cream color scheme. And she wanted to be different. Really struggled to get hold of a blue capsule because they didn't make them. And but somewhere in Italy or someplace, somebody made it for her. And ever since then, that has been part of our story. That Le Femme Bleu unfortunately didn't last very long. I think 6 months after that wine was released, Norma got a lawyer's letter in the post saying that is a trademark somewhere in France. And then she changed the name to the Blue Lady. And that was, like I said, that was in the early 80s. And from there, the story about the First Lady or Norma being our First Lady, and very much First Lady of the wine industry, has really kind of grown from there. And basically we've done is add a little bit of personality to the white. So White Lady is 100% Chardonnay, Blue Lady 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, 3 Cape Ladies is a blend of 3 varieties, as you might guess. So really just to add a bit of personality and to keep that thread of strong women through the wines and through the company. So that's where those come from.
Speaking of strong ladies, I can see that my dear mother Helen is busy watching at the moment, and she sent me a private message, asked me to please not mention that how she had arrived in crutches at Warwick the day after my wedding for a picnic, having been dancing on a table at my wedding, thinking she was Greek at 3 a.m. and fallen off. So, Mum, I promise I won't mention that you broke your leg dancing on top of a table at my wedding, and then arrived at Warwick the next day. Warwick the White Lady, the Chardonnay. I've got some here, been poured through my Coravan, which is wonderful. It's a great new addition to my cellar. I have poured myself a generous splash, but happily so. Your Chardonnay here, I've had it many times, but talk to us about it from your perspective. What you're trying to get out of this particular Chardonnay, given that there are, I think, increasingly different styles of Chardonnay that we're able to make and that we're able to produce to celebrate the grape.
Absolutely, and I think Stellenbosch has got a lot of excitement around Chardonnay in the last couple of vintages, and rightfully so. So with the White Lady, we combine the kind of largest part of this wine comes from the Warwick estate itself, and it's a vineyard on the opposite side of the road, up against Simonsburg, so faces west. So it's a vineyard that really gets beaten in the afternoon sun. So quite a rich and textured style that comes from there. And in order to counterbalance that, we source in some grapes from the Helderberg, actually not very far from where Ken is based, a little bit up the hill from him, and obviously being a little bit closer to the ocean on that side, you get a little bit more freshness, you get more lime and citrus from that side of Stellenbosch. And I think the two really blend in quite well. You've got this incredible texture, you've got this great structure. Barrel fermented and aged for 9 months. It gives you a classic kind of French Burgundian style, but definitely with that Stellenbosch uniqueness and Stellenbosch flavor that we want. So really putting our kind of hand up, saying that there's a resurgence in Chardonnay, and then we want to be part of it.
We've got quite an interesting comparison here, because you're followed on by the ageless maestro of Chenin Blanc, who basks in the stuff, let alone moats it. And there's a very good natured battle, but a battle nonetheless, I think, between Chardonnay and Chenin for top dog status in terms of the slightly broader, fuller white wine in South Africa.
Absolutely, and I think it's quite exciting. For a long time, the market was dominated by Sauvignon Blanc. And I think it still is, but we've got such a broad spectrum of great wines being made from Chardonnay and Chenin, and obviously Chenin, we've got the incredible old vine heritage. So I think it's great. We've got we are a fairly young wine drinking culture in South Africa. So obviously, with the more those cultures age and become more kind of experimental and adventurous, they broaden their horizons to new varietals. Obviously, I've got a big love for Sauvignon Blanc. I'm not trying to put it down, but I think it's very exciting that we see various different styles of Chenin coming out, and obviously these old vineyards that have got incredible history and gone through droughts and all of these things. And I think it's very exciting to see them coming to the fore. And obviously Chardonnay is a classic. It's really I think doesn't matter who you talk to around the world, it's one of the kind of most drunk varieties, and ultimately a very kind of almost timeless piece of wine. So I think it's something I hold very dear.
You mentioned those old wines. I see Greg Sherwood is watching from London, probably having nicked the password for somebody else's Wi-Fi, and is busy tuned in. And I'll be catching up with Greg from London, along with Ian Nadir, talking about some of his old vine wine. I've got some whites going back 15 years, which I cannot wait to chase. That should be in the next week or two. All right, so beautiful, beautiful wine. It is one of the 2 for the auction. So you're going to be receiving a bottle of that, plus 3 of your friends receiving a bottle. The other bottle from Warwick is this, and this is the Cabernet Franc. I was having a conversation last night, JD, with one of my mates in Cape Town, Greg Berg, who's got a private wine club, and always have great excitement for selecting wine, and he was asking me some recommendations on Cabernet Franc, because for him it's always been a grape that he's never been sure of, and I gave him a dressing down for that and said, no, Cabernet Franc at the moment is fabulous. We drank some earlier this week with Gerard Holden Mance's Reserve is lovely. The Cabernet Franc that Antonio Rupert is doing, Bear and his team, is just superb. Rainbow's End. And then I mentioned your Cabernet Franc because you guys are not new to the trend in as much as it is one. You've been mastering Cabernet Franc for a while, but I think part of the space now where South Africa is really embracing Cabernet Franc, not really consigning it to being just a small part of the puzzle that is a blend, but able to step out into the spotlight as its own grape and really flourish.
Absolutely, and so Cabernet Franc is a challenging grape to grow. It's got a lot of similarities to Cabernet Sauvignon, but its biggest issue is the fact that it ripens about a month earlier than Cabernet Sauvignon does. So you end up having a very short window to get your flavor ripeness, to get that correct. And I think for a long time it was, as you said, only seen as a blending component, and only seen as something that you would use in a Bordeaux style blend. And I think in the last 20 years, we've learned so much about viticulture, as we know how to farm it, also know where to plant it. It is quite a herbal and leafy variety. So it's something that struggles when it's too cold. So it needs enough sunlight and it needs enough heat to really ripen the grapes. But when you do get it right, it's got a perfume and a floral element that Cabernet Sauvignon doesn't have, and it really just has a lightness and a lift in the wine that is incredibly intriguing and alluring.
And I was saying the same to Gerard on Monday. The moment you get a bit of Cabernet Franc in a blend, it doesn't overwhelm everything else, but it's impossible to miss it because it's just got that beautifully distinctive feel to it, which combines delightfully. A couple of people saying hello. Greg Sherwood, as we mentioned, is watching. Warwick Winemaking, very safe hands. Klaus de Winter, greetings from Belgium, JD, looking sharp. Klaus, great to have you. Hello to Belgium. Klaus is, of course, who's got the eye patch on. And then Tom Orphan from Warwick, welcoming my mother Helen back to his tables at any occasion down at Warwick. Don't give her that invitation. She will be there, Tom, and you will regret it. I'll take no responsibility. She'll bankrupt your tasting in absolutely no time at all. All right, so just before we wrap up, we've got these two lines coming to people, and you very kindly, and thank you for it, agreed. You're going to join myself and Ken for our winners of the Reach for Dream auction, and as well as the winner, him or herself, getting those 5 litre bottles, the chance to just hang out with us for an hour or so and drink some fantastic wine.
Absolutely, sounds great fun. Drink wine, talk nonsense. I'm in. So thank you, and thanks for having us again.
Oh, JD, it's always a pleasure. I do love Warwick. The day after my wedding, it's got great memories. My mother's notwithstanding, and so even if it's virtually, it's always nice to be back at Warwick. Yeah, thank you very much, and we'll see you against that private tasting with our winner, who might well be watching at the moment. Who knows? JD Pretorius from Warwick, really appreciate the time and the generosity. Thank you very, very much indeed. Right, so that is the first half of today's tasting. If you have just joined us, a reminder that today's live tasting celebrates the Reach for a Dream auction, and I'm enormously proud to be part of. We've teamed up with Reach for a Dream. We just continue to do such phenomenal work, changing young lives, sadly, lives that are afflicted quite often by terminal illness, a chance to give them a really great experience. Those experiences cost money. And so that auction will kick off on my social media channels from 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock Friday morning. You have the chance to win a 5 litre bottle of Trilogy from Warwick, plus 2 bottles of Warwick, the Chardonnay and the Cabernet Franc, for yourself, and 2 bottles for 3 of your friends. So 8 bottles in total. We'll deliver them to your friends, and I will be hosting a wine tasting with JD. But also part of that wine tasting will be one of my very, very favorite pensioners. He comes to us via a fax machine that is plugged into a BlackBerry somewhere in the back end of the Eastern Cape. I don't know what he's doing there or why he's there, and I will not ask, but I believe that is where he is, and he is going to be chatting to us because he is the other half of this auction. Ken Forrester has, with trademark generosity, and assisted by his marketing intern Lo, provided us with a 5-litre bottle of the Barrel, which is a very special red selection they don't make much of. And so a second 5-litre bottle is part of that auction lot. As well as that, 4 bottles, so 8 bottles of wine, 2 each to the winner and to 3 friends. And Ken will form part of that virtual tasting with myself and JD. So with the last sip of the Cabernet Franc, which is lovely, let me say a very good evening to Mr. Ken Forrester.
Dan, nice to see you as always. And honestly, you don't look a day older, as I said to you. Keep those chins up. You're doing wonderfully.
You're a delightful man, Kenneth. Thank you very much. It's lovely to see you, and it always is. And to have you away from your bridge club and joining us for some wine is a great bonus for everybody watching. And we've got some wine to taste, which I know you do with great enthusiasm. Before we do that, just a big thank you. And it's something that I think people don't always understand. They go, oh yeah, he's a winemaker, he's got loads of wine, he can give us wine for charity, it doesn't cost him anything. Well, that's not the case. Every bottle that you do give has got a not inconsiderable value. And I know how much you give. If I look at KP with his conservation space that we've been part of, numerous other charities I've seen you support, and now this one here for Reach for a Dream. It's not something you have to do, and I know it's not something you feel pressurized into doing. It's just something that sits at the heart of Ken Forrester, something you want to do, something you really love doing.
Dan, giving back, I think, is absolutely vital, no matter how you do it, no matter how you play that back to the people, to the market, to your surroundings, to your community. And I think it's critical that we all give back all the time. And particularly when you look at ourselves in this era, I think that this year has perhaps put a microscope or a magnifying glass on all of us as our lives have been stopped. We've had to stop and look. We've had time to review, to see what we do. And, the very first thing when this thing hit, when we looked at it, we said, well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen about the budget? And I said, screw the budget. Let's just make sure everybody stays healthy. Let's try and keep the business on track. Let's try and keep this all going, and just let's just push through and make this happen. We'll have a look at next year for a budget. This is not important any longer. And your particular charity that you're speaking of, Reach for a Dream, has for many, many years been a favorite charity of mine. I've seen the work that they do. I've been involved with them previously on a number of occasions. And they truly, truly do make dreams come true, which, what could be nicer? What could be happier than to create a dream come true for somebody who possibly won't live terribly long? Truly, it's a wonderful charity.
It is. As I said at the very start, it's a charity I wish I didn't have to support, because I wish it didn't exist, because I wish we didn't have terminally ill kids, but we do. And so thankfully Reach for a Dream does exist. And Julia and Natalie and Chloe and the team, Mervyn, are just extraordinary people who do something I could never do. But what I can do is jump onto my wine show and use the platform to drink wine for a good cause. And so you and I are being very, very selfless to that end today. And let's remind people of what is up for grabs, starting with that 5-litre bottle of the Barrel. And if memory serves, is that 100% Mourvedre?
It might be, yes. It's something of that ilk. It's a project wine. It's part of. We've got a youngster working for us in the winery, a guy called Sean Matthijs, who went to agricultural college in Stellenbosch, studied winemaking, and came up, and I picked him up at a snap. I was so happy to bring this kid on. What I love about the kids, Dan, is when my kids got to about standard 6, I actually couldn't help them with the homework anymore. I'm not sure what we did at school, but they didn't teach us that stuff. And the kids of today are so educated. They're so smart. They've got so much going for them. And this young guy was just dead keen, eager to make a living, to make a life, and to make a name for himself. And I really, really wanted to mentor him. So Sean Matthijs is his name. Look out, his name, you're going to see him. He's going to do really, really well in this industry. And the Barrel was part of that process of getting him involved. And we started out with a friendly golf club manager one Friday afternoon going through the cellar barrel by barrel, as one does on Friday afternoons, to pick the best barrel to bottle for his members. And we finally chose this barrel, probably out of necessity, I think, because we couldn't get to the next barrel. It was just that far away, and the barrels are packed quite tightly, Dan. I'm not as skinny as I used to be. So we picked this barrel. I checked it out on the Monday morning. We made a couple of small adjustments, blending in a little bit of perhaps Grenache just to lighten it up, and we bottled it, and we had bottled the first series of the barrel. We launched it to just a limited series from 1 barrel, numbered bottles, bottled only in magnums, 3 liters, and 3 5-liter bottles. And we've given up one of those 3 5-liter bottles for the charity. It's one of 3, that's it. It is a 5-liter bottle. And it's the most delicious, rich, dark, juicy wine. And it's really, you'll read the back label, it tells you that this is a project and that Sean is now in charge of the project. He runs this tasting every year when we select the barrel. He chooses the wine that goes into the barrels. He's buying the barrels. And this guy is stepping up to the plate. And this is slowly becoming one of Sean's special projects.
Well, I have drunk some of this wine. Your son-in-law, Slow Stradum, sent some up to me. I opened a Magnum. I think I might have had 1.5 glasses of it because my wife and her sister absolutely smashed it and delighted in it. It's just such a fun, gorgeous wine to drink. And whoever wins this is going to be really, really lucky. 5 liters of the stuff, which is just terrific. But that is not all that you are going to win. There are also 2 bottles going with it for the winner, plus 2 bottles for 3 other friends for that virtual wine tasting. We have them delivered for you. Just before we drink them, I can tell you Charmaine Walters says it sounds like a great initiative, and she is in. Greg Sherwood says Botox works wonders. I'm not sure if that's you, me, or both, but thank you very much, Greg Sherwood, dialing in from Putney. And then Skulk Stapelberg wanting us to share a link to the auction. Very simply, Skulk, it's going to be up on the Dan Nicol social media channels from 9 o'clock tomorrow. So Dan Nicol on Twitter and Dan Nicol on Instagram, Dan Nicol on Facebook, but I'll link it to all of my other platforms as well. And then Charmaine Walters, the bottle test has evolved to the barrel test. Says Charmaine. And I think I know Charmaine well, and I think Charmaine Walters and Ken Forrester would be a very dangerous combination. So we've got that barrel. We've also got the 2 bottles of wine, and no surprises. Alexandra Forrester wants to know if she can win. If you want to listen to your father for an entire hour on top of what you have to endure as it is, you're very welcome to enter, and you're very welcome to bid, because it's not a raffle. You've got to send me lots of money. You do that, it's all yours. Pleasure. I can hear Lo telling you to stop already. So Ken Forrester, the wine with which Ken is synonymous. He is the godfather of Chenin Blanc. This is the 2019 Old Vine Reserve Chenin. And I was thinking about this, Ken, before we came on air, and thinking about your range of Chenin, because you've got a whole pile of them. You've got the Petit Chenin, which sits at the entry point of the range, a Chenin we're going to be drinking with some clients in Dubai in about a month's time, which I'm really looking forward to. Then you move up to the very top, the FMC, which you can buy if you sell your house and your car and 2 of your children, but it's worth it. I'd do it immediately. And then there's this, and I think I would probably say, and you're more than welcome to disagree, as you frequently do, that this would probably be my pick if somebody were to say, what's the best value Chenin Blanc I can get from Ken Forrester? There's no doubt that the FMC is the best, and it is a wondrous, wondrous wine, and I love it, but it is not an inexpensive wine, and rightly so. But in terms of value, this Old Vine Reserve Chenin, especially if you've left it for a couple of years, I think just delivers so brilliantly on a combination of price and quality.
Dan, that's good to hear, because my kind of benchmark is that I want to make sure that the wine is priced at the price that I'd be prepared to pay for that wine. I want to be able to buy it, take it home, open the bottle, drink it, and go, yeah, that was fair, that was pretty good, that's great value. Because everybody wants great value. Above everything else, nobody wants to get ripped off. And if you can show great value in a bottle of wine and repeat that and do it consistently, it really does buy wonderful, wonderful loyalty. And boy, more than any time ever before, loyalty is what's carried us through. We've had the most incredible response from our customers, from our clients through this period. We've, like JD said, we climbed into our cars, packed our cars. I now know officially that I can get 86 boxes of wine into my Land Cruiser. That's what it carries, apparently. And that's kind of, then you've got to get them out to deliver them. And I had never understood that people live down 30 or 40 stairs or up 40 or 50 stairs. And you've got to carry boxes up the stairs. Oh, no, the life of a delivery man, it's too hard to contemplate. It really is a hard life. But we delivered, and it was wonderful to meet our clients, wonderful to see them. And they couldn't believe that we were kind of dropping wine off Percy, but everybody at the winery was dropping wine off Percy. The courier companies were just completely blown away. They could not cope. This was a bottleneck to end all bottlenecks. I mean, it was phenomenal. The opening up of the industry was a test for everybody involved, and not everybody passed. We did our real best. We got some grumpy letters, and I understand. We kept people waiting 2 weeks. We'd follow the parcel and find that the parcel got delivered to Port Elizabeth in 3 days, and from Port Elizabeth to a home address in Port Elizabeth, it took 10 days. And you just like, figure this out, guys. How can this be possible? But here's what it is. We got through the storm. We're back on track. Things are going really, really well. And quite frankly, I've forgotten the question you asked me.
It happens at a certain age, Ken, not to worry. And it was simply a comment that I feel that your old vine reserve, for me, is your best value in terms of delivering such fabulous quality, but doing so at a price that's accessible.
All I can say, Dan, I now know why you remind me of my wife. That's exactly what she tells me. She says that as well. This is her wine of choice. It's embarrassing. I buy her wine, I bring her wine home, other people's wine, because I try and drink other people's wine as much as possible. So scared of getting what they call a cellar palate, where you just love your own children, which is fine. I guess that's cool. But you do need to know what's going on in the marketplace. And Teresa drinks this wine as a matter of course. And it's embarrassing. I'll pour wine for her, and I'll go out the room to whatever. And I'll come back and the wine's finished. I'll come to top it up, say, no, I'll try the Chenin Reserve, please. And she's tossed the other stuff. I mean, she does that. I mean, anyway, but cheers. Thank you very much. It's a great compliment.
Well, Teresa's taste in wine is as good as her taste in men is questionable. So we'll salute her from the wine perspective. And she has mentioned online it's an absolute favourite, the Chenin Reserve. So thank you, Teresa. That's Ken's significantly younger wife. And then also a message coming in there from Karen Bothma. He's a great fan of the show and always supports us. Thank you, Karen. Had the 2007 Old Vine Reserve over lockdown. It truly is a wine that keeps on giving. And for me, in closing on the Chenin conversation, it's not a new one. It's not one that we haven't had before with you or with other people who've given us Chenin on the show. The potential for Chenin Blanc to age and to enrich and to become just so much more of a delight is, I think, being more and more understood. And I think that's something you take a fair amount of credit for, Ken, because you were one of the guys to take the real plunge in terms of saying, you know what, Chenin Blanc's more than just some skin we can pass off nice and cheaply to guarantee a 4-day headache. This is actually a wine that can become some of South Africa's finest.
Dan, it was very much a matter of situation vacant. I looked at the Cape wine industry when I came into the industry in 1993, and there was a Chardonnay champion, and Tim Hamilton Russell had championed Chardonnay and come up with this Burgundian style of Chardonnay from the coolest vineyards in the Himalaya Valley, furthest south vineyards in the country. There was the Pinot Noir wasn't really on the map. He was fighting with Pinot Noir, getting Pinot Noir to happen. There was a Cabernet champion. You were looking at Canoncorp. You were looking at Rustenburg. There was a Sauvignon Blanc champion. But nobody was championing Chenin Blanc. So it was clearly a position vacant. And I had Chenin Blanc vines. It was like a match made in heaven, a mariage made in heaven. All these old Chenin Blanc vines, when I spoke to the kind of guys that were the consultants at the time, they said, no, get a bulldozer, push that stuff out and plant yourself some Pinotage and Sauvignon Blanc, because you can make a reasonable Sauvignon Blanc here. who gets out of bed to be reasonable? I mean, I kind of would rather be unreasonable or beyond that.
And
But
frequent.
thank you, Dan. You know, I love getting into a tongue twister with you. It's only a race of two horses, and you're either quick or dead. You don't want to come second. I normally do, but so Chenin Blanc was a natural choice. I had the raw material, and I had a very simple kind of notion that these vineyards had been in the ground for 20, 25, 30 years. Who was I to arrive here day one and say, okay, you guys, you're no good. Let's rip you out. How does a vineyard stay in the ground for 30 years if it has no worth, no value? Somebody saw value in that. Somebody saw worth in that. So I figured out I had to find out how to do it. And literally climbed in on trying to make Chenin Blanc work. We put Chenin Blanc, I went and did a vintage or two in the Loire Valley with Bernard Germain at Chateau de Fel in Toissé, a tiny little village outside of Angers. And I worked with Bernard, I worked in the harvesting, I worked in the cellar, and he was fermenting Chenin in big 400-liter barrels, French oak, and about 20% new. He was keeping the barrels in a 5-year cycle, every 5 years taking out the 5-year-old barrels, bringing in new barrels every year. So there's always a kind of cycle ongoing. And this was great. So I bought some of these barrels, and some of my colleagues in Stellenbosch looked at this lot and looked at Chenin Blanc in barrel. And the comment was, you come from Johannesburg, right? And I was like, yeah. And you did get a return ticket, because if you're putting Chenin Blanc into barrels, you might need to use it. so yeah, you know, fortunately, I still have the ticket stub. I haven't had to use it just yet. And we've been making Chenin Blanc since 1994. You know, I can't believe I could even imagine it being going 25, 26 years. And it's just been a journey. And I got to tell you, I had the most magnificent, the most unbelievably fascinating and really just pleasurable experience talking to a colleague's daughter. She's now making wine, as her dad is. And she's made a Chenin Blanc to her first wine. And I said to her, so tell me, why did you choose Chenin Blanc? She said to me, don't you know, I mean, Chenin Blanc is the voice of South Africa, obviously. And I looked at her and I thought, phew, I love you. Yeah, job done. You know, it's great. And there's a whole echelon of youngsters who are making Chenin Blanc, I mean, in every conceivable form. And if anything, if you look at, let me put my head on a block here. If you look at a Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir, Cabernet, Chenin Blanc, Chardonnay, whatever, where are the most creative labels coming from? It's all on the Chenin Blanc. Whether it's Divilkey or Woman and Wolf or you name it, there's just the most unbelievable creativity around Chenin Blanc. And you're seeing a lot of small producers producing small batches of absolutely beautiful wine, exceptional wine. It's so great. It's wonderful.
I had some of Jocelyn Hogan's 2015 Chenin the other day, which was just blindingly good. And that is, as you say, one of many. And that is a wine that will be coming your way if you're the winning bidder on our Reach for a Dream auction that starts at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, runs for 48 hours across my social media channels. A chance to win those 2 5-litre bottles from Warwick and Ken Forrester, as well as 8 bottles of wine that will be going to, 16 in total. There'll be 4 bottles for the winner and 4 bottles for 3 selected friends, and a virtual tasting with myself and Ken and JD. We have one other wine, and it's the final wine that forms part of the auction. But before we talk about the Renegade, Ken, a quick question from my mother, who'll shout at me if I don't ask it to you. There's some terrific artwork behind you. Very briefly, which I know is not your forte, can you give us a story on the paintings behind you?
Yeah, all of these paintings are done by a lady who's a really, really good artist. And what she did was she shamelessly went and chose all of her favorite artworks and copied them to train herself, to test herself. And so there's a range of everything. There's even a Mona Lisa in the house. She's done all of these things, and she's taken famous artists, taken some of their best work or work that she loves, and she's taken that work and then said, okay, how did they paint that? How did they get that feel? How did they get the tone? What were the colors? And this is how it's come about. So it's really fascinating that they're all copies, but they're all personal. You know, they're in her home, and just, I think it's a great concept, beautifully done. Lovely test.
And it's a wonderful combination. You've got the gallery feel behind, and then the museum piece in front. So there really is a cultural feel to our show this week. Let's wrap up while you're still talking to me with our final wine. And this is one we spoke a little about this before, Ken, but I think it's worth touching on again just briefly. If there is a downside to becoming the godfather of a particular varietal, as you very much are, and rightly so with Chenin Blanc, it makes people think, well, that's all that Ken Forrester does. And if he's giving me something else, well, I don't really want to drink it, because how's he possibly going to get it right? All he can make is Chenin Blanc. Whereas those people who've drunk the Ken Forrester range across the spectrum will know that there is so much more than just Chenin that you can make. This Renegade is a good example, which you'll drink in just a moment. But is that something that concerns you? Is it a challenge for the Ken Forrester brand to ensure that the world knows you beyond just Chenin Blanc?
You know, it is what it is. Chenin Blanc is what we do. And I do reds in the kind of style of the Rhone Valley, because that's our climate. Because where we're situated in Stellenbosch, about 4 or 5 kilometers from the ocean, from the Atlantic Bay, if you like, from False Bay, we have a typically Mediterranean climate, southern Rhone climate. And Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, that barrel, as you said, is Mourvèdre. I planted the very first Mourvèdre vineyard in Stellenbosch because I believed it belonged there, and yet at the time nobody had planted Mourvèdre. And when I spoke to the authorities, the KWB at the time, and said to them, I want to plant Mourvèdre, they said, oh, that's weird because nobody's done that, so we don't think it will work. And I was like, well, imagine that. If you've never tried it, it probably won't work. So let's try that. And then literally that's how Mourvèdre came about. And now you're starting to see more and more Mourvèdre carrying on. And it's a fantastic grape for the region in our climatic zone. So I think the Rhone Reds are particularly pretty in our zone. We're cool. So you get some elegance. And when you're working with Grenache and Mourvèdre, these guys really love to be the bouncers at the party. I mean, they all want to wander in at about 14 or 14.5 or 15 alcohol. I've had barrels of wild ferment Grenache get to 16% alcohol. I mean, you don't tell anybody about that. You keep it for yourself and you drink it slowly. But for the rest, we try to get some elegance, and the coastal conditions give us that elegance. And by putting together a blend of the 3 grapes, I'd like to imagine an upside down pyramid, if you like. If you could think of a pyramid on its head, Dan, that might be tricky for you, but go with me here. And the pyramid, if you come in at the top end, you've got this whole big broad platform. I want red fruit, cherries, a kind of sweet red fruit going on, maybe even strawberries, maybe pomegranate, all that red fruit character. Below that, I want a layer of spices, and think of the spices that you get out of Syrah, and think of black pepper, white pepper, nutmeg, cinnamon maybe. And then down below that at the point, that part that you can barely kind of see, that's the boom box in your lounge behind the couch that makes the TV sound so good. You get this kind of boom, boom coming out. And that's what it does. So you have these 3 components together, and there's no relationship, there's no recipe. We don't have a cookie recipe for this wine. We're not baking, we're making wine. And each year, the raw material is slightly different. So it's not 1 spoon of sugar, 1 spoon of flour, 1 egg, because all these things are different each year. So it's driven by the red fruit flavors of Grenache. And often people will say to me, what's the percentage of Syrah? And I've got to say my stock standard answer is enough. Don't worry, it's enough. I've tried it, it's enough. And when we make the wine up, we go through the winery, we go through the barrels, we taste these barrels. They're in old barrels for 2 years. We keep them in old 400-liter French oak barrels that came out of the white wine cellar. So they're 5 years old when they're new in the red wine cellar, and they get to be 10 or 12 or 14 years old. And we taste through those barrels, mark them up with a piece of chalk. You know, like the old school teacher used to have a piece of chalk behind the ear in your day, Dan. You might even remember that. I mean, a bit difficult now with keyboards and things, but yes, there you go. And so we mark them up and score them, take the best barrels, draw all of those good barrels together into a little bench blend, and then take those barrels once we're happy with the blend and put it into a big tank I then get somebody to count the empty barrels, and then we know what the blend is. Until then, I haven't got a clue. How percent of Syrah or Grenache, it doesn't really matter. It's enough. And that's why it's called Renegade, because there's no recipe. There's no rules.
What I absolutely love about chatting to Ken Forrester is that the answer has very rarely got anything to do with the question, but it's generally extremely entertaining and very informative. And what you did manage to do indirectly was actually answer the question I was going to ask you, which was about the Renegade, which you have now just given us. So that is what we have. And so this is going to be your final bottle in your collection. So a reminder, if you are the successful winner with our Reach for a Dream auction, kicks off 9 a.m. Friday, finishes at 9 a.m. on Sunday, you will win for yourself 5 litres of the Trilogy, 5 litres of the barrel led by Mourvedre. Might have something else in it, but Ken made it at 3 o'clock in the morning, so he's not entirely sure. You'll also receive a bottle of the Warwick White Lady Chardonnay, a bottle of the Cab Franc, a bottle of the Old Vine Reserve Shannon from Ken Forrester, and a bottle of the Renegade. And 3 of your chosen friends will receive those 4 bottles as well. And once we sort out an appropriate time for all of us, together with Ken and with JD from Warwick, I will host a virtual tasting, and we'll get, in the company of 2 great wine characters and 2 wonderfully gifted winemakers, the chance to try some of that wine. Ken, before we let you go to finish off, in most cases it would be people just finishing off the bottles. In your case, it's finishing off these cases. The wine that we have makes for a really, really special treat for people to try. And it's a treat that I think we've seen a lot more of over the last month. JD was talking about just how their sales have flown through the roof. It feels now like we're in a real boom time for South African wine over the space of a month. But I realize that that's a lot of people stocking up on cellars, worrying that perhaps wine might not be on sale for a while. So they want to make sure they keep going. Getting beyond just this immediate restock space, how boisterous is Ken Forrester feeling about the South African wine industry?
Yeah, Dan, you know, it's resilient, and the guys have been used to, we've seen tough before. We good at tough. South Africans kind of do tough well. And we'll come back. We're good. I think a lot of people are finding it very, very difficult. Sure, it's whacked us. We've seen a huge tail off in real sales over the period of this. You know, we're coming, give yourselves a clap. You got halfway through this year already. Did you realize you've done half this year and you got nothing out of it? It's a frightening thing, but that's where we're at. So we're going to keep on. We're going to keep batting away. And, you know, the guys are good. We're all in good shape. We've been blessed with a good vintage in 2020, a magic vintage in 2020. It reminds me of 2009. It's that good. And so, yeah, let's see how this goes from here. It'll get better and better. I have no doubt about it. We're pretty good. All
right. Well, I will raise a glass to you of the Renegade as my final glass for today's tasting.
Just thinking, Dan, and I'll probably get into a lot of trouble with JD, but I'll broker my way out of it. I'll trade him some wine. But you're doing a virtual wine tasting for the host and 3 of their friends.
Correct.
Shouldn't that be 6 of their friends?
Oh, that's very generous of you, Ken Forrester. If that would be great. Thank you very much.
I'm sure JD will come along, and I'll bribe him with wine. You know, cash might be king, but truly barter is smarter.
All right. Well, there we go. What a wonderful way to finish off the show. Ken Forrester confirming that it is not you plus 3 friends. It is you plus 6 friends. So that is 7 bottles of wine. And yeah, I'll phone Tom Orpin after this and let him know that Ken Forrester has pledged some more Warwick wine to the cause. But Ken, thank you so much. Even without that added generosity, you and your team have been fantastic, particularly Lo, who's a great personal assistant to you, I know, and does a wonderful secretarial job. So thank you very, very much indeed. And yeah, we'll be joining you and joining JD, and probably in the next month or so, descending on 6 or 7 living rooms across South Africa and enjoying some wine together.
Super, Dan. Thanks so much. Thank you for including us, and thank you for playing along. You know, let's see what we can do next.
All right. So there we go. A huge thank you to Ken Forrester. He's a wonderful, wonderful man and a great friend of the wine industry, great friend of South Africa. And he does so much for charity, as do the guys at Warwick. Tom Orpin, you didn't see him today, but Tom, National Sales Manager, has been a terrific supporter as well, together with JD Pretorius. So that is where we sit. We need your bids. So from tomorrow, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, jump online. It'll be on my social media channels. That's the Dan Nicol channels, but we'll boost them on the Dan Really Likes Wine channels as well. Supporting Reach for a Dream, who continue to do such terrific work. Julia, Chloe, Natalie, Mervyn, they're just wonderful, selfless people who make dreams come true on a daily basis. And by supporting the auction, you'll make their dreams come true. And without going too overboard, I think this is a bit of a wine drinker's dream as well. 5 litres of the barrel from Ken Forrester, 5 litres of the Trilogy from Warwick, as well as wine for you and for 6 friends. 6 friends. So it's gone up to 7 lots of wine in total, which is just absolutely fantastic. So please do jump on board, show your support, and every single cent, goes through to Reach for a Dream. So support them. I know you're supporting something very, very special indeed. Remember, if you are on the lookout for wine, there is a terrific selection both in store and online at Pick and Pay. The Wine Club, as you can see on screen, is free to join. You just need to send through your smart shopper number, and there are loads of great benefits and a terrific range of wine to be found as well. Now that wraps us up for the week. Currently running our weekly episode showcases the Coravan and, amongst other wines, the 1978 Meerlust Cabernet Sauvignon, celebration of my birthday earlier on this week. A terrific wine, and one that had lasted the full 42 years, I think, in considerably better condition than me, but that is not a great surprise. To look forward to next week, well, on Monday, I'll be joined by Justin van Wyk from Constantia Glen as he compares his 3 and his 5, the 2 red blends that have garnered his estate so much acclaim. And we'll also be catching up with Nick Van Aard from Oldenburg and drinking some Cabernet Franc, amongst others, my current wine of besotment. I'm really enjoying Cabernet Franc at the moment. So thank you very, very much for tuning in, for watching, for supporting our regulars, to Greg Sherwood, to my mum Helen, Myra Berger, Karen Botmascol, Stoppelberg, Charmaine Walters, and a whole pile of others who always tune in and support us. We really do appreciate it. Thank you, not just for supporting the show, but for supporting South African wine as well. 9 o'clock tomorrow. Get bidding online. Let's see what we can raise for Reach for a Dream, and I'll see you back on Monday evening. We'll let you know, if you haven't seen already, what the final bid was, and we'll be chatting to Oldenburg as well as to Constantia Glen and drinking some more fantastic South African wine. Have a lovely weekend. Drink South African. See you next week. Cheers.